Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 2 of Tape Deck Tales. Last month, we took a look at the holidays and how they've changed since our youth. Today, we're going to look at things that have vanished. Kind of like Kevin Bacon in Invisible Man, these things cannot be seen anymore, or maybe not seen without the memory of a Gen Xer or older millennial. One of the big things in my mind that has disappeared is the freedom of childhood. Now, most of us on this panel that you'll meet in a few minutes grew up in more rural areas and were allowed to just get up in the morning when we chose, get on our bikes, and go. There was no checking in. There was no Life 360 app. There was no key fobs or anything that you could attach to your kids to know where they were 24/7. You had to trust your kids and you had to give that trust back to your parents by not going out and creating too much mischief. You could get out and go, and your curfew was the streetlights. For me, growing up in the Adirondacks, that meant getting on my bike and going wherever I could ride as long as I could make it back in time. And sometimes that meant all the way from Anchiota, 14 miles to Saranac Lake and back. For some others, when you got your driver's license in your car, you got in and went as long as you had gas money because mom and dad weren't giving it to you. The freedom also extended in the wintertime. When you had snow days, nowadays kids are sitting in front of their TVs or their screens or their apps watching whatever is on YouTube or Disney Plus or whatever. But for us, it was getting out, putting on our snow pants, our hats and mittens, and going out and sledding down a hill or building a snowman, having snowball fights with the neighborhood kids. It was just a freedom to go out and be trusted. The term is latchkey kids, and that was sort of meant that, we had the freedom to go out and let ourselves in and out of the house as long as we were trusted. And our parents didn't worry as much as today's parents do. And I, as a parent myself, I understand that there are times when I'm not quite sure where the kids are. They're not home when they're supposed to be. I immediately pick up my handy little cell phone and see where the kids are as long as if their cell phones have been charged. And my mom and dad couldn't do that. They had to trust that I was going to be home when I said I would or when my curfew was set. And if I didn't, then there would be hell to pay, but that's another story. The childhood freedom that we enjoyed as younger Gen Xers, older Gen Xers, and older millennials is gone. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because there was a lot more problems, that we had to worry about that maybe today's kids don't with the lack of technology. But at the same time, I felt like it trained us to be adults, whereas some of the kids nowadays, and you see it all the time, they don't have that same common sense and critical thinking that we'll talk about later when it is time for them to become adults and get out on their own. So what I want to do now is bring in the panel, and I'm gonna introduce them with my. Okay. Starting clockwise to my right, we have Mark. And as mentioned last month, he was on his way to Kenosha, and you can read it on his hat, have you been to Kenosha? But the thing he misses the most from his youth is his memory. But he doesn't remember what it was like, so here he is. Right below him is Larry, and it goes without saying what he's missing. Just look at the top of his head. Down on the bottom is John, and his sanity is gone, and it has been gone since before he was even born. And finally, the one female in our group, Michelle, and of course, the thing that she misses the most is her ability to give a bleep about anything. Welcome, everybody.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Mark, what do you think about that, the take on childhood freedom and how it's different today than it was when we were younger?
There's quite a big difference. Back then we didn't have as much to worry about. Excuse the way I say this, but with all the sickos that are unfortunately, around. Um, Most people were pretty trustworthy, and I mean, I've got stories that'll make your head spin on things I did that I wouldn't dare do as a kid now, for fear that I'd be kidnapped or something bad. But yeah, there's a huge difference, and I feel bad for today's youth because I wish they could experience the same thing we did. My curfew wasn't like yours. It wasn't the street lights. It was be listening for the old man to yell, and I could hear him from a mile away, and that meant get your butt home now. But yeah, it's way different than it was back then. Kids nowadays, even if they did get away from the computer screen, you wouldn't dare let them out beyond dark. Yeah.
Michelle, from the difference from when you grow up to raising your own kids, how would you feel that your youth influenced how you were as a parent?
Ooh. Well, I was very fortunate. My oldest, she was like the perfect child, didn't do anything wrong. I was just like, where did she come from? Because definitely was opposite of me. I got into a lot of trouble. And my dad basically could follow me somehow. He always knew how to track me. But as for me growing up, I grew up in a very strict religious family. And when I raised my kids, I said, yeah, I'm not gonna be like my parents. But then as you go along as a parent, you see like, okay, my parents were kind of right about some things. I hate that part, but you kind of have to admit. But I definitely see a huge difference. I would never do half of the things now that kids do. I don't know. Especially with cell phones, there's always somebody whipping out a cell phone to video everything that you're doing.
Which gives them a lot more courage, in my opinion. They do things that they normally wouldn't just to get views or, because everybody's watching literally now. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, but
No, go
You're good.
ahead. It's good for the back and forth whenever somebody brings up a thought. Larry, when we talk about our youth compared to today, there's a key factor that was missing for us that the kids have, and Michelle just brought it up, the cell phones. There is no video evidence of some of the antics we did growing up. And how do you think that changes
no.
the uh, the kids when they decide to do something because one of their friends could record it and post it online where their parents would find out, and we never had to worry about that.
I think a lot of the things that kids post online today is stuff we would have considered taboo back then. And we were still doing some reckless stuff.
Oh yeah,
But,
I agree.
our pranks were mostly harmless back then. The things we did were mostly harmless. Uh, if you were trying to one up somebody, it wasn't the whole world you were trying to one up. It was a couple of friends you were playing
Yep.
with.
Yep.
We were more interested in riding our bikes and going on adventures and discovering things. And it's a lot different today for kids. Their discovery is in their hand where ours was in the world.
John, what do you
One
think is the
phrase I
biggest
see.
takeaway from the change from pre-technology, pre-cell phone era to today when it comes to how it influenced us as parents with these kids now that we're raising or have raised?
I think it's, as I was going to say here, one thing I keep seeing come up every now and then with some of Gen X and older millennial crowd is the idea of missing secrets. Nowadays, nobody keeps their secrets anymore. They just put it out there for the world to see. And I know growing up, one thing that we learned a lot about or heard a lot about was mind your own business.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your stuff to yourself. Nobody needs to know anything about something you're doing that they just don't need to know about. And
Yep.
nowadays, doesn't seem like any of the kids or a lot of even some of the younger millennials or whatever, they don't care about minding their business. They want everybody to know their business and they want to get in everybody else.
Do you think it's a ever going to go back to obviously having to add technology in now because that's not going to go away, but go back to a time where people were more likely to mind their own business and not post everything they did and said and saw online?
Still have some people that do mind their own business, but there's way more that don't, and I don't see it changing.
Yeah.
Some people, most people that do that get too much of an endorphin rush or a high putting that stuff out there, even if it makes them look stupid. Got to get some views, you know,
Mhm.
gotta get the followers.
As if tech all of a sudden took a dive for whatever reason.
And then they'd be forced to,
Mhm.
Yeah.
because they wouldn't have that shield between them and everybody else. You couldn't, the stuff
Right.
they're posting nowadays, you wouldn't dare do in front of somebody or say right directly to their face.
Right.
You've got that little thing there you're hiding behind that, well, I can say it and they can't see me. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of this technology has made people lose their sense of, well, they've lost their morals. Some, not everybody. And they just,
Unfounded confidence.
yep. And disrespectful. I mean,
Mhm.
if I did half of, I mean, some of these videos you watch, body camera videos, the way people get pulled, if somebody gets pulled over for something simple like a light bulb out, and the way they ride the cops right off the bat, it's ridiculous. I mean, you didn't dare do that back then. You had respect, you had a fear. Nowadays, nobody's got any respect or any fear. They think that everything they see online is right, and everybody's a lawyer, and it just, yeah, the technology's got its place, but there's a lot of things that people do now they wouldn't have done back then. You're right.
And it's often just motivated by how many views can I get for this?
Exactly.
Growing
Exactly.
up in an era of the playground has changed. If you go to the kids' schools nowadays, you see soft padded rubber or cedar uh, fragments on the ground before
Mulch,
when they land,
mulch.
Mhm.
mulch. Uh, but a lot of the equipment has changed too. We had some equipment back then that you really earned your stripes. And one of the first things I want to think about is the merry-go-round. John, you were an offensive lineman growing up, and one of the things is you always had the biggest, strongest kid that would whip the merry-go-round as fast as he could and see who would stay on. Were you that kid that was whipping it, or were you on the merry-go-round holding on tight?
Well, that depended on the type of merry-go-round because there was, the smaller ones that had the stationary bars that you'd sit there and try to get spinning as fast as you could. And then there was the monster that was the big pumping one that was all metal and wood. And you could get that thing just from the pumping going real, like waiting for it just to lift off and take off. And you would be lucky if you didn't end up having to get a tetanus shot after riding it.
Yeah, or just from looking at it.
That one was my favorite because we could get that sucker going. And the smaller ones, yeah, you could get them spinning. And yeah, you're right. The big kids usually were the ones trying to get it to go as fast as they could, and see if you could get the little scrawny kid in the middle to hold on as long as you could. But that big one, you could get everybody on there, and that was probably a little too dangerous even for back then with how fast it could get going. Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
very good.
Yeah, that's the little one I'm thinking of. The one what I talk about. Big one. I don't know.
When you had the handlebar up top, it was a big square, and then you put your feet on the bottom, and as you pulled and pushed with your feet, and you just,
Oh, here
yeah.
we go. I can.
I always thought it was like being at space camp and you were feeling them G forces of entering the Earth's atmosphere or something like that, you know?
I'll tell you,
I don't
we
know if
hooked
that's mine or not, but
we hooked a dirt bike tire, pump it up against merry-go-round like that little one.
Oh, my God.
Sean.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. You put your feet on the bottom of those and pulled on the top, and you pushed and pulled at the same time, and you got 3 or 4 guys on there that had a little muscle to them. I think you were getting more G's than what you get in a jet fighter, because man, you just had all you could do to hold on. You'd get off that thing and you'd feel like everything is still at the back of your body, and about ready to fall over and yak up everything that you had in you. But man, let's do that again.
I know the one that I had, it was just like this one. It just wasn't as colorful.
I had a lot more tetanus, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michelle, what's
Yeah,
some
we
of
had
the
one like that at school. If I remember right, it was rust and like a cherry stain.
And splintered wood.
Yeah,
It's
dry rotted cherry
black-based
stain
paint.
wood.
Michelle, you bring a different perspective to the merry-go-round. Obviously, when the big boys were spinning it fast, did you were you ever a part of that, or did the girls have a different game they played?
Oh, she was probably over by the basketball poles and against it watching the stupid boys.
No, unfortunately, I grew up with all boys in my community, so I was a tomboy. So I used to try to whip them around and make them fall off of it.
Another
But
one,
no.
another one of the equipments that we had. Of course, the merry-go-round is one of the more famous ones that disappeared, but the teeter-totter. And although they still exist in some places, my daughter actually broke her arm on one that was in her grandparents' backyard, and because of things like that. And another story that I remember from first or second grade where a kid named Dennis was standing on one end of the teeter-totter while the rest of us tried to catapult him and ended up getting cut right here, and he still has a scar to this day from where it hit him in the head on his way down. Those have disappeared a lot. And that was another thing where it was the size difference between the kids had something to play in it. Larry, do you have any memories or any stories of injuries from a teeter-totter in your youth?
I feel like I may have cracked my tailbone a couple of times when somebody would jump off the other side and came crashing back down to earth. You know, it was
that concrete stop at the bottom.
yeah. We didn't have the tires underneath or the soft padding. We just came down back to earth and jarred our spines, and
and almost equally as bad as when, because you had the ones you could pick up and adjust to it, compensate for a lighter, heavier person. You get that thing bouncing so hard that it would literally come right off the pole, and you'd all tip off of it, and the board would fall over and fall on you, and yeah. You know the ones I'm talking about. They had the
the three little
adjust it back and forth. Like I'm heavier than them, so give them more leverage. Yeah, that we get that thing bouncing so hard when the guy across from you would hit that you'd go up in the air. You'd have all you can do to hold on. I mean, a cell phone camera would have been great for those days. Because I'm sure you'd have seen me looking like I was pulling off some sort of X Games stunt on a dirt bike, feet up in the air and head hanging down and tongue hanging out and screaming for my life. But yeah, we really get raising heck on them.
Yeah.
And that's still not my favorite toy that was on the playground.
That's a multiple teeter-totter setup that Larry's showing right now, and the max we might have had in my schools were 2 or 3, but yeah, the size of those kids, you get off the ground quite. And you think about the story that I mentioned of Dennis. We were in first or second grade, so we were about as little as those kids are, and he, came all the way down when he hit his head on that, and the seat was metal.
Oh.
Yeah. We got luxury of a seat. We didn't have a seat.
I was gonna say you were lucky if you had a metal seat.
We had metal T-bar to hang on to, and that was a culprit of a few black eyes, broken chin, teeth knocked out.
My son just texted me, and of course, this is the things I couldn't do with my father back then, but he wanted me to know that there is a camper park near us that still has an adjustable teeter-totter. And a merry-go-round too. And we went to a wedding back in September, and I saw him, as he's over 6 feet tall, as one of the ones whipping the other kids around. So they got a little taste of it.
Yeah, I can see him doing that.
Yeah.
That's just it. Those teeter-totters got about 5 to 6 feet up.
Yeah.
So
or more. Yeah.
We mentioned merry-go-round and teeter-totter. Real quick, I'll mention swings have changed, because even though the swings are still there, when you're jumping off, you're landing in a nice soft cushion nowadays instead of just whatever the ground had. But one of my favorites was the monkey bars, and we had 2 different style setups for monkey bars. There's the one that you see most commonly in like a Most Extreme Elimination Challenge or American Ninja Warrior, and they're not actually monkey bars, but where you're climbing across. We had that, but we also had like a pyramid shaped with a circle, the fireman's pole in the middle. and we had a double fireman's pole in Bloomingdale Elementary. Sadly, a school that's going to be shut down soon. And I got up to the top one day, and I went to like lean my feet on the top bar and hold my hands, and I lost my grip and went all the way down, chest first onto the hard dirt ground below us, and it was a good 3-4 minutes before I was moving. And the wonder of the 1980s is not a single person checked on me. They just let me sit there while I caught my breath
Yep.
and suffered.
Yep.
Now,
Walk it off.
Mark, you mentioned earlier your favorite. I don't know if the monkey bars is it, but what was your favorite playground?
Monkey bars, absolutely. The first one that kick it to the top and maintain the top was the big man for the day. And we didn't have one like you were saying. We had one that was literally square. And then at the top, if I had to memory, I'd say it was probably at least 10 to 12 feet long by maybe 8 to 10 feet wide. And you went up a perfect square. And then the upper level or two was like 3 or 4 blocks in the center. And my God, I might be exaggerating, but it had to have been all of 12 feet off the ground at the top. And those bars were only about an inch around, if I remember right. And they were the cause of a lot of me singing soprano at times. Slip off that bar and land just straight, and you're like, oh. And you're right, you fall off, but the teacher would look at you, turn and look at something else, and like, brush it off, you'll be all right. Or like Eddie Murphy when somebody's on fire, I roll him around a little bit, he'll be all right. You know, yeah, they didn't freak out. Oh my God, Johnny fell and he's got a scratch. No, I was like, you won't do that again, will you? You know, they look over at you, dummy. But yeah, monkey bars are my favorite. And most of us boys would just beat feet for that thing and go up that dang fast. And you got up to the top, and when the teacher wasn't looking, if you weren't the first one, you'd shove the guy off that was, and yeah, I'm up here now. And next thing you know, you're on your butt on the ground because somebody shoved you off.
Mhm.
But I watched guys bounce off those things like a Plinko game going down, and you could do nothing but laugh.
Larry's
But yeah,
shivering right now. Another one that has disappeared is the old school metal slide, where in the summer it was 95 degrees on your backside, and in the wintertime it was an
Yep.
ice rink right down. And
Yeah.
we
I
of
actually
course would go
just got
down.
rid of our old metal slide at the park near my house.
and you
It's all plastic now.
you slide down one of them back then, and if you were in shorts, you'd play a tune with your butt cheeks all the way down, and you get up, you'd be rubbing it because your butt would be on fire from the heat of the thing and then the friction on the way down.
Yep.
Learn not to wear shorts on the slide.
I took a
Yep.
spill off one of them when I was a kid.
Yeah, we had one about identical to that, and they had to have been all 8 or 10 feet off the ground.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
big back then.
If you sat too far back at the top, you ended up going down the wrong side.
I've come off it backwards more than once, taking out 3 or 4 people waiting on the ladder below me. That was a plus because they kind of cushioned my blow as I was going down. But yeah, I sat down, you get up there and you grab them curled handles and you'd swing yourself back and forth and kick your feet. And once in a while you'd lose your grip and you'd drop down and you'd be back too far and you'd keep going. The ground would eventually stop you. But you learned after that you didn't show off and swing back and forth because most of the people you wanted to show off were too busy playing with their hair. You know, the girls would be looking a different way, and you doing all this cool stuff and they didn't even see it. But you learned to not do it. But they always seen when you fell, and they'd start snickering and laughing, and you'd hear about it all day. Hey, how was your fall? Have a nice trip. We'll see you next fall. That kind of stuff. And yeah, yeah, this slide was some fun for me as well. I always liked the high stuff. Now you couldn't get me to climb. Well, if I could, but you put me up there in a lift. That's all right. You expect me to climb? Forget it. It ain't happening.
The last thing I want to mention, and then we'll have some honorable mentions, but my elementary school had 2 of them right outside the building. Ours were in the shape of motorcycles, but sometimes you'd see them as horses, or they might be outside of a grocery store or something. They're rockers, and
Yep.
of course, 2 kids would get on and you pretend you're racing, and we could get those suckers going all the way back to where you were literally touching the back of the ground and coming forward. Like I said, ours are motorcycles in my elementary school. At least my memory says they were motorcycles. Maybe they were horses. But Michelle, do you remember anything like that?
It's funny you say that. I remember there was a bee. I don't know why it was in the shape of a bee, but
I think we had caterpillars.
yeah. My grandmother was a teacher's aide, so I tried not to get in trouble at the playground. It was so not fun.
I had an aunt that was a bus driver, so I get it. We got on the bus. Oh God, I'm on Aunt Kathy's bus tonight. I tell your father, but most of the time wasn't even that. She just really trying to backhand you one. I told you to behave. What? Okay.
Yeah, they could do that back then.
Yeah,
I was gonna
well,
say,
that was
that's
an
another
aunt that
thing.
literally
Wow.
lived 2 doors down, and I didn't hear about it just on the bus. I heard about it when I got home and went to her house too. The hell was wrong with you today? You know better than to do that. You do it again, you're going to get whacked twice as hard. And there were no cameras on the bus back then. They didn't care. And
Right.
like I said, with her being my aunt, she didn't care anyway. She'd tell her boss, you know, that's my nephew. I beat his backside on a daily basis. Him getting a cup upside the head is minor. But yeah,
Let's
I
go
didn't have
around real
anybody
quick.
that worked in the school till high school, and then one of my other aunts was a cafeteria aide. So when I'd see her out in the hall waiting to get into the cafeteria to get my lunch, I was good. But once I got in the cafeteria, all bets were off. She couldn't see me, and
Real quick,
so
let's go around and if there's any things that I forgot before we move on to the next topic. One mines we had was a sandbox, and it was in the shape of a square. And those of us who were WWF fans at the times would use that to make our wrestling moves. Except, again, I always have injuries, stories of getting injured, where I slipped and crotched myself on the wooden frame of the sandbox. The one was green, wooden frame, and it was in the wintertime, and I slipped on the icy sides of the sandbox and went down while I was trying to do my Macho Man. Yeah, dig it. Mark, what about you? What's another playground equipment that I haven't mentioned?
yeah, like a monkey bars was in the shape of a fire truck. And what always got me is, and I'm not one to be wasteful, but to see those brand spanking new tires on that thing with big 1-inch holes drilled in them, I'm like, why didn't they get something from the junkyard? You know, get something that's got no more use to it. Take a brand new tire and drill a hole through it. That didn't make sense. But that's one that we all like to get about. Everybody had to be the driver, you know, big old fire truck, and then you get all the guys hanging from their knees off the back going, oh. Yeah. Well,
Michelle, what about you?
yeah,
I'm gonna say I like the merry-go-round was pretty fun, but we had like the tires that were like a tunnel, like he was just saying, I think. So
oh no, these were the actual tires on the truck.
oh yeah, no, we had like tractor tires and stuff put together, so it was a long tunnel. But then, you know, the boys and girls, the bad ones, they would hide in there and do things.
Wow, never heard of that.
Me, of course.
John, what
Me
about
either.
The
Nose growing?
little, like forts that they would have on them too, that kind of went along with the massive monkey bar setups. They're kind of joined with them, and you had like little fort setups to it too. And we would be climbing on the outsides of those things, and you're like, yeah, minimum of 12 feet up in the air or more, even just climbing on top of this wooden structure and try not to fall down.
I think that's one reason why a lot of the guys from my generation ended up being steel workers or construction workers, and they just run around up there like it's nothing. It's because what we did when we were kids.
Yeah. You
Now,
saw
Larry,
that stuff you wanted to climb all over.
Larry, you already mentioned the slide. Was there anything else you want to bring up?
I can't think of anything. We, you know, growing up in Antwerp and Theresa, we had pretty basic playgrounds. So you had your slide, your monkey bars, and your teeter totters. I don't remember
No,
what's after that.
no swing adventures, no flying 30.
Oh yeah, I remember one time jumping off the swings and my knee came down on a rock and that hurt like a son of a bitch. You know,
You ever have your knee come down on somebody else's head?
No, not on accident at least.
And there was always that one kid that wasn't bright enough to watch it. You were swinging and walk right in front of you. When you're back at about 15 feet off the ground, you come down and get them with your feet, and they would tumble for 30 yards across the thing, start crying, and everybody else would be laughing. And once in a while, a teacher would come over, you'd get a cuff upside the head when it wasn't anything you could do. You're mid-flight, and this kid just comes running right across 6 inches in front of the swing. And when you hit him, he was going for a ride. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun on the swings too. Get stuck in the little kid swing, the babies put them in there. And yeah, gym teacher had to come and get me out one day. He says, you're not the average sixth grader size wise. I was always, taller and a little bit more husky. And he said, but this is made for little kids, babies and stuff. I'm like, well, I just wanted to see if I could fit. I got stuck. They thought they were leather. They thought they were going to have to cut leather or rubber. They thought they were going to have to cut me out of it. And give me some vegetable out of the kitchen. He got me out. I got to go home early and change my clothes, but they made me come back. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a lot of stupid stuff on the playground that I really enjoyed.
Another thing that has changed a lot since we were kids and things that have vanished because of how it's changed is shopping. Nowadays, if you need something, like we were driving back from North Carolina and my aunt's husband had misplaced his phone charger, so I was in the passenger seat while my son was driving, and we were in Northern Virginia at the time, and I ordered him a new phone charger, and it was delivered to his house in 10 minutes. Of course, that's the kind of, you can jump on Amazon, Walmart, whatever, and have that done. But back when we were growing up, you didn't have that, and shopping was an adventure. In fact, one of the things, and Mark, I'm going to ask you about first because you're the one that brought it up, was the Kmart eateries. And we had something similar in Saranac Lake, and I cannot remember the name of the store because it wasn't a Kmart, but it was a local store. They had and I used to love going to the restaurant for chocolate milk and whatever we were going to eat, but those eateries and the stores themselves are gone. I mean, even going to the mall and a lot of places, especially up north, they don't have as many options anymore. What are some of your fond memories of those style eateries, Mark?
They weren't just eateries to me; they were more of a hangout spot. Like you go in and you don't want to be there with your parents while they're shopping, and they take forever and a day. And then you go in and you sit down, and then a friend would come in. Next thing you know, you got 5 or 6 of your friends, and you're all there getting in trouble, scratching up the table and writing on it and sticking things on the bottom of it. And once in a while, going up and grabbing a soda. But that's what I miss, is just hanging out with the boys, sitting there, not having to go shopping with the folks. I mean, we didn't do a lot of that around, but when we did, because where I lived was extremely rural, but once in a while we'd get out of town and we'd stop at a Kmart or well, there really wasn't any Walmarts back then, but not in our area. But you always had somewhere to sit down and eat, and it was one of the better aspects that you looked forward to when you went into a store. And I think that's where a lot of the food court, the kids come into the mall and not really shopping, but they go hang in the food court and hang out all day. I think it kind of derived from those things when they were younger. Your parents would want to go in and talk to Santa. And, well, we don't want you to hear what we got to say to him. So you go over there and sit in the cafeteria, and it made it nice. You went over there, you had something you could do that you enjoyed. But I think they'd be a waste nowadays, because if you have them now, you'd go in there and the kids would be all in their face would be buried in their phone. It's not like then, you got there and you seen your friends and you're talking about what you did and what you're gonna do and who did this and who got in trouble and who outran the cops and whose dirt bike is running and are you getting your snowmobile out this weekend? And you always embellish and fib a little bit. Oh yeah, my son will do 158 miles an hour, single cylinder, 12.3 horsepower sled that did about 22. Yeah, that thing would rip, and I jumped 103 feet in the air and 700 feet, like the fish story. It went from fish like that to you should have seen it. It was massive. But that was the camaraderie, I guess you'd say. You get in there with your buddies and just hang out and then ogle at the girls that walk by and they give you dirty looks or they giggle. I miss all that stuff from back then that just wouldn't happen today if they were around.
I just had to Google that restaurant. It was store restaurant that was in Saranac Lake because it wasn't Kmart. It was Newberry's, and I can remember
Oh,
part of our adventure going to Newberry's, and they had an upstairs and a downstairs, and it always seemed. I don't want to insult it, but it's not there. It's not like I want to hurt anybody's feelings, but it always seemed like the downstairs wasn't as organized or clean as the upstairs. But the restaurant was one of my favorite parts because it was always I always loved the food there, even though we didn't eat there that often. It wasn't like um, Lakeview Deli or Mountain Mist or something that we would go to all the time. But Newberry's was something in Saranac Lake that was kind of like the Kmart, where it had the eatery, the restaurant right inside the store.
Love the cat there, buddy. I'm a huge cat fan. That cat looks a lot like my little baby running around here.
I mentioned earlier the malls and how it was especially if you didn't live in a city where you had easy access to a mall. For me in the Adirondacks, the malls were in Plattsburgh, and at the time Plattsburgh had
yes.
two, the north and south, or old and new as we'd call them, and it was a 45-mile drive. So to us, the malls was an adventure, and there were the stores you knew you were going to hit your Saturday matinee, your KB Toys, service merchandise was in the mall. Sears always had a big corner. Michelle, where you grew up, what was some of the things about the malls that you remember fondly?
Well, I grew up with the Salmon Run Mall, and they had that big kinetic ball thing that they still have in there, but it doesn't all work. But I don't know why we all thought that was really cool. But that was the mall. I mean, I didn't get to go to the mall much. It was a treat if we got to go
Yep.
at all,
Yep.
because that was, like you said, 45-minute drive. But I
Probably
can't
the
even
thing
think
with the
of where we went shopping. Ames.
oh yeah, I
He
miss it.
says.
For one of these episodes, I have a shirt. I have a Grand Union shirt, which Saranac Lake had two of them. That was our big grocery store, and I have another one, Ames. I'll wear it like tonight. I'm wearing my Knight Rider shirt. For one of these episodes, I'll dig out my Ames shirt and put it on. John, you grew up about 20 miles. Your high school is about 20 miles from mine, so we were the closest neighbors that would have for the Adirondacks, the shortest
Mhm.
road trip for a sporting event. So your mall trip was another 20 minutes beyond mine, unless you were going to Messina. But again, what are some of your memories from growing up? And did you get to any malls? Was it the same kind of thing
Plattsburgh
as
Mall. Yeah, it was the Plattsburgh malls for us, and yeah, the whole food court hangout because there was the arcade there too.
Yep.
And I mean, unless it was local, if we didn't go all the way up to Plattsburgh, for Tupper, the hangout for all the kids was Stewart's. It was centrally located, not too far from the park, not too far from the school, kind of right in the middle.
If you're not watching this in New York State, Stewart's is like a 7-Eleven, a New York
Yeah,
State, especially northern New York convenience store.
Back in my heyday,
But
back in my heyday when I was raising King, you really didn't. Stewart's wasn't around. I think the company they bought back then was Mercer's Quick Stop, and they hang out in there because the store owner or proprietor would say, "Get out of here! If you're not buying it, and get lost."
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's a little after my heyday, but yeah,
No, Stewart's was around back then. I've never knew about Stewart's till I moved up north.
well they've been around a long time. They all started down near like I think Saratoga, and
Oh,
they've grown
Here we
massively.
had convenience stores. That was the name of them.
Convenient. Then they went to Bond Fair.
On Fair, yep. And
Then the Stewart's. Yep. But prior to Convenient, we had Mercer's Quick Stop. You all probably heard of the Mercer's ice cream in Boonville.
Yep.
Same
Yep.
people. There was two stores then. There was one in Boonville, ice cream store, and then in Lions Falls they had a small little I guess you'd call it like a convenience store, and they had ice cream in it. And but yeah, it went from from Quick Stop to Convenient to Bond Fair and Stewart's, and by the time it hit Bond Fair, I was already an adult. So that's yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I'm
on
the old
mall
guy
before-
here.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the mall before I bring up the next one? All right.
they're
Mail order.
non-existent.
yeah, they're all
Ordering
practically
things-
gone now. I mean, the buildings are still there, but the stores ain't.
Ordering things through the mail. Nowadays, you get on your phone, you get on your app of choice, Amazon, Walmart, whatever it does, and you order, and it's there. Depending on where you live, it can be there within 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer for some of us in northern New York. But back in the day, you'd get your favorite magazine, whether it was for me Football Digest or Sports Illustrated, Nintendo Power, and if I wanted to order something, it was going to be 6 to 8 weeks for mail delivery. For those who have not seen A Christmas Story, it's pretty much like that when he's waiting for his decoder ring from the radio show that he was listening to. What was the name of that radio show that he was?
Orphan Annie something.
Yeah,
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
An
So he had his
Orphan Annie
decoder
show
ring,
or
so
something.
he could read in the back of the magazine. He could figure out the code, and it was drink your
Your
Ovaltine. Is what it was
Ovaltine.
called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
yeah.
remember some of
Your
the things
Ovaltine.
I remember waiting for and um taking forever to get were a hard to find video game or something that maybe Ames didn't have, and we'd get it through. Fingerhut was another mail order system. Sears
Oh,
would send
yeah.
out the Christmas wish list. Larry, do you remember anything specific that you remember waiting for that you ordered?
Oh yeah.
Mail?
When I was younger, I was a skateboarder. So every year for my birthday, I'd be allowed to get a new skateboard. And so my source for skateboarding, because we didn't have stores around here that pertained to that, so it was California Cheapskates. And so you'd go, order the catalog, go through the catalog, order your stuff, and then wait for it to get delivered. And back then, we didn't have instant tracking of the packages. You had to call, you had to punch in a number, and it was updated, not so regularly. So it was always a wonder, like, hey, is it here today? Is it not here today? I don't know. When am I going to get this skateboard so I can get out and use it?
Yeah.
One of the things I remember through Football Digest, they had this advertisement for older games on cassette tape, and it was actually not VHS even. It was the older radio broadcast, and I ordered the 1958 NFL, and it actually began my love affair with collecting old games. The 1958 NFL Championship, the Colts and Giants, John Unitas and all them guys. I ordered it through Football Digest, and I think it took about 2 months to get there. And I must have worn the cassette tape out listening. I had that John Unitas drive memorized on how he led the Baltimore Colts down to beat the Giants for the 58 NFL title, and that was something that I still have those old Football Digests, and now I want to find a game. I can find it, most of them on YouTube, but the I wouldn't say the thrill, the agony almost of the wait. Michelle, what were some of the things you had to wait for?
Ordering from boxes of cereal. They're little prizes you would have to send in, and I don't know as if I had to wait for much. We didn't. I don't know. I can't think of anything.
How about you, Mark?
And this is probably going to predate most of you guys, but back then there really wasn't a lot to order online. But there was one thing you usually found it in some magazines, but it was always in TV Guide. And I can't remember who it was, but there was always a promotion to buy 10 or 12 cassette tapes for a penny.
Oh yeah.
Columbia
That's
House.
back when I was a kid, back in the 80s. And that was the one thing that you would order. And now you couldn't do it if you were under 18 because you had to lie and check the box. Yeah, I'm 18. How are you going to know the difference?
Yep.
But yeah, that'd be the one thing. Like, when am I going to get these cassettes? This is so cool because you could order all the new cassettes you wanted and everything. You could get a COD back then. So you didn't have a credit card or anything like that. And you get those 10, 12 cassettes in. But the deal is you had to sign up for a year or two of buying one cassette a month for that at regular price. Let's just say when the parents got the bill, they weren't happy. Because it'd be COD, you didn't have anything to pay because you would you'd get the order form and have a little circle and it says attach penny here, and you tape it with a piece of Scotch tape, throw it in an envelope with your choice of what you wanted, check the boxes, send it out, and it'd come back. You'd have brand new cassette tapes. Usually it was 10 or 12 for a penny. And after that, you'd start getting, if you didn't order one, they would pick one at random and send it to you. and it was only $5, $6, $7 for cassette. But you know, when it starts coming in and it's got your name on it with a bill, and your parents realize that you're not responsible for it. I remember a lot of phone calls being made, and I remember where you'd get them from because I remember the calls. Terre Haute, Indiana is where they would come from. And yeah,
Columbia
that's
House.
Columbia House. That's it. I
Right.
couldn't remember who it was, but yeah, that was the one thing that I remember waiting for in the mail. Other than that, we didn't, you know, there wasn't, unless you look through a Sears catalog or something. Like I said, I'm kind of outdating you guys by a little bit, but yeah,
We mentioned,
there
we
was
mentioned
no
already,
video.
we mentioned already the stores that have disappeared. Ames, Grand Union, A&P is another shirt I have. Mercer's, service merchandise. Any other, before we move on to the next category, any other stores you guys think of that don't exist anymore that you went to
I
as
think
a
I just saw
youth?
something the other day that Sears and Roebuck is pretty much toast and done for everywhere.
For me, it would have to be Woolworths, and they started right here locally for us. And
Yeah.
Have to be worth 7 down.
Woolworths,
Our local place was Montgomery Ward when it was.
yeah, them and Sears were big competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
J.C. Penney came in and kicked in, and then J.C. Penney bought out Sears, or no, I take that back. J.C. Penney bought out Phase or one of the drugstore part Phase. It was Phase because I ended up as an adult working at a J.C. Penney catalog store as one of my side jobs. I had 1, 2, 3, 4. I had 4 jobs at one time when I was in my mid-20s, and J.C. Penney catalog store happened to be one of them.
We can't forget
It was a
Radio
hardware
Shack.
store, a sub shop, a parts store.
We can't forget Radio Shack. That's another one that's gone.
Oh,
Yeah,
Let's say
That's
we
where
had
I got my
one
first-
window shack in it.
Yep.
that's where I bought my first portable cell phone, was from Radio Shack, and it was Singular back then, which is now AT&T. My actual first cell phones were probably 93 or 4, and I had to go to the mall in New Hartford. It was not Riverside, but the other one, Sangertown Square,
Fingertown Square.
and I had to get the bag phones. Man, they were godly expensive, but
Blockbuster
yeah,
Video.
Radio Shack, huh?
Blockbuster Video.
Yeah, never really used. I use their boxes once in a while. Red Box is another one that's gone.
Saranac Lake had one called Broadway Video that started out on Broadway, which runs right through the middle of town, and then moved off Broadway, but kept the name Broadway.
All in general, your video rental stores.
Yeah.
I mean, go in and rent a VCR for $5 a night.
Now you can
Everything's
just
online.
get it on
Streamed.
an app, and if you don't want to own the movie, you can just rent it on Amazon or something.
Yeah.
Another thing that's changed a lot is the way we eat, the foods and drinks and stuff that we had growing up. And one of the first things I remember fondly is a cereal that was a very limited time called C3POs. And
I remember them.
I'm sure there's a ton of cereals, but I remember on the back of the boxes, you cut out the masks of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, C3PO, Yoda, and it was so short-lived and it disappeared. And I did some research on it, and it turns out it was a recipe that was recycled and used in other cereals, and I didn't know that at the time. And now there's a cereal that uses the same recipe that's only sold in Japan. And of course, now in my late 40s, the sugary coated cereals is not something I should be eating. So if it ever does come back to America, I probably won't go for it. But what are some of the cereals or breakfast foods that are gone from your daily life from back then, Michelle?
You have to pick me. No. Well, I want to say there was a Smurf Crunch or Smurf.
Smurfberry Crunch.
All stuff my kids ate.
Yep. And then I've recently seen all the Halloween, the Frankenberry, Boo Berry, and all that.
Count Dracula.
Yeah. Those were my favorite. Any with the little marshmallows.
Yeah, Frankenberry.
Back when I was eating cereal as a kid, there wasn't a lot of sweet cereals. You were lucky if there was Frosted Flakes. Like Larry's got King Vitamin, but that was more towards my teen years. late teen years actually. When I was a kid, you wanted a sweet cereal, you got the sugar out and you put money, or you put it on your Cheerios or your corn flakes, and there really wasn't a lot out then that I can remember.
What about some of the
Besides,
snack foods that are gone? I think about the various kinds of fruit roll-ups and all the different things they did,
Right, a
and
foot.
some of the obviously the companies still exist, but they've changed their products. Larry, what would you eat after school when you came home?
Man, you had to ask, didn't you?
See?
It was always Chef Boyardee, which is still around, and it was always easy foods like that. We weren't too much into the novelty foods as much. My brother was a huge DiGiorno fan, like that was his thing. But for me, it was just whatever.
I still remember a version of Snickers where they had peanut butter in it, and you don't see that version anymore. The peanut butter Snickers. I only got it a couple times, but
that's fairly recent as well, though, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
It
remember I
wasn't
first
a
got it
very
in
big hit.
middle school, but
I
anybody
think
else with a
Yeah.
snack food or a cereal before?
I don't have a snack that isn't no longer around because we didn't get a lot of snacks. It'd mostly be potato chips, and and I think they still make them, but Terrell's potato chips, you get 2 bags in a box. So. But my after
Pizzerias.
school,
You mentioned potato chips. Pizzerias. For me and my buddy Wade, on a Friday night, we'd get a 2-liter Mountain Dew and a bag of these pizzeria things that, again, they don't exist anymore. And we would play Super Mario Brothers, and that's how we were dorks. That's how we would spend our Friday night in the summer.
well, a
Before
lot of these
we were
snacks
driving.
still kind of exist, but in a different form.
Yeah.
My go-to snack when I get home from school, majority of the time, was a great big scoop of peanut butter. Don't ask me why. Didn't care much for a peanut butter sandwich. You put a bunch on a spoon, and I'd sit there and watch after school specials with a big old gob of peanut butter on a tablespoon, and just as far as again, back when the dinosaurs roamed when I was a kid.
Peanut butter.
They really did. There was snacks around, but parents didn't buy them as much because they knew they were garbage and they weren't good for you. Potato chips were a big thing for us. Ice cream, but there again, it was all really special occasion. You got an ice cream at night, ice cream on a stick or a dish ice cream. You were dancing around and like, oh my God, we get this once a week, But yeah, as far as snacks that went away, I don't remember a lot of snacks until my kids grew up, or till my kids were around. And
there was this ice cream sandwich in the late 80s, and it came back about 10 years ago. And Larry, I'm sure you remember this one. WWF ice cream bars. And back in the summer of 2011, CM Punk made a push for them to come back, and they came back limited time only, but they were a cookie ice cream sandwich.
Oh,
And
yes.
it had Hulk Hogan
Yes.
and Andre the Giant and Randy Savage on them. And those, I really think that a lot of the reasons I'm probably overweight now is when I finally got money, and WWF ice cream bars disappeared, but ice cream was always a favorite. We had the Schwann's delivery in upstate New York that's recently
that still
disappeared,
disappeared.
but they would come right to the house. This mobile ice cream truck right to the house, not like the
Yep.
ice cream trucks that most people see in movies and stuff. This was a rig that had
Little
frozen
freezer on
compartments
wheels.
in it, and you'd get
Yeah.
big gallons of ice cream.
See, WWF, when I was a kid, wasn't directed towards kids back then. That was more of a man's adult sport. Bob Backlund and Bruno, what was the announcer's name?
Dan Martino.
San Martino. He was an actual wrestler. Vince wasn't the owner. He was a wrestler. The Iron Sheik. Just that was more focused towards adults then.
Yeah, it was.
I remember
the 1984 expansion national when Vince Jr. had purchased the company, and he started marketing toward kids, and with the characters and Hulk Hogan and the ice cream bars and the cartoon show and the video games and all that. But
you got to remember, 1984, I was mid-teens. I was,
and Mr. T showing up. That's what got me into wrestling.
Yep.
My brother and I liked the A Team, and my father was a wrestling fan. So when Mr. T showed up on WWF, he got the VHS tapes so we could watch, because it was on MTV and we didn't get MTV, and so we could watch Mr. T and Hulk Hogan teaming up, and then at WrestleMania 1. Drinks. Drinks is another thing that have changed. Some of it
Oh.
because of necessity. There's much more varieties of water nowadays than there ever were back then. Back then,
Don't get me started.
the pouch drinks started, and we had the Capri Suns back then, but there was other kind of pouch drinks. I remember elementary school, we always had the milk cartons, but for a period of time, the school decided, or New York State decided, I don't know if you guys remember this or not, to save money, and we had what can best be described as a breast implant with milk inside it,
Yeah.
because it was that kind of consistency, and you'd stab it with a straw,
Yeah, how
and milk would
freaking
splash
straw.
everywhere. It didn't last very long,
Oh, those were terrible.
I
but
don't recall them.
You could never
probably after your
stab it
time,
just
Mark.
right.
Probably. Yeah, we had the
John-
cardboard milk carton.
John, we had some sodas back then too that were probably more toxic than good, like Surge and Jolt Cola.
Original Surge, Jolt, yeah.
Recently, I saw
they make
Pepsi,
energy drinks
shameless
look
product plug,
tame
sponsor
nowadays.
us. Recently, I saw Pepsi had a promotion where you could, on Facebook, you could click love if you want Crystal Clear Pepsi to come back, which was a 1990
Oh
thing,
my God.
or click like if you wanted vanilla
Yeah.
Pepsi to come back. And people, I urge you, do not like the vanilla Pepsi. Go
Oh,
with the
I
Crystal
love
Clear.
it.
The Crystal Clear, because I especially remember the song on the commercial was a popular rock song. I think Led Zeppelin maybe or something. But Crystal Clear Pepsi made a brief comeback in a summer maybe 10 years ago, and I got some to take to camp with us, and I would like that even for a limited time to come back, especially if they could do a zero sugar version of it. John, any other drinks that you can remember
Around.
from?
Surge was a big one for us because we'd use that. That was our sitting around the fire playing video games in the shed drink. I mean, besides the standard like Mountain Dew and Pepsi, what was it? Orange Gina was a big one. We had, remember Jones Soda?
No.
Kind of like it was very local-ish, local production where he'd have a weird picture on it, random pictures of weird nonsense that had nothing to do with the flavor of the soda, but people would buy them just to collect the bottles. And it was always in the old style, pop cap and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, Surge was like the biggest one that I remember for my group of friends that we always drank. And I remember seeing that in the last 2 or 3 years, even made it come back up here anyway, but I can't find it anywhere now. You can still
Surge
order
around
online
the
though.
time of COVID. My wife used to drink Surge around the time of COVID. It just
Yeah. Back then, you also had Jolt Cola.
Yeah,
Jolt
Jolt.
Cola, which
RC Cola. Yeah, you couldn't get.
You can still get that, I think.
Yeah.
Now the ones that I recall getting, you guys might recall, but you go back to the field days, you'd have the bottle ring toss, and you'd get those glass bottles of soda. They were like a 1 liter bottle, and they were different brands. It was like Knee High and just a whole bunch of old different brands. Any of you remember them? The glass bottles?
Oh yeah, those
Bring
were
'em.
bottles that we take once you got those empty.
You got
put 'em in
to
the
deposit
fire
on them, yeah.
Yeah.
And you try to
And
melt
what-
them down in the fire pit and make
Oh,
ashtrays or whatever out of them.
yeah.
I
And another
remember
thing about
once-
soda,
Go ahead.
another thing about soda, how many of you guys remember the Pepsi Challenge?
Yes.
Yes. Oh my. Yes, at the Governor St. Lawrence County Fair.
Yeah. How old were you when that came around?
Oh.
10, 11.
4 times.
Yeah, it was probably 15, 16. I remember at the Boonville Fair, we'd go in one of the buildings and there was a Pepsi Challenge. And I mean, even back then, you could taste the difference. Big difference. But I don't miss a soda that went away per se, but I miss the original recipe. They can't. They don't. They can probably do it, but they don't. They save money. They cut corners. You get a bottle of original classic Coke.
Yeah. Have you tried the Mexican Coke? It's in bottles. You can buy them at I think I seen them at Walmart or somewhere.
No, but I'd be willing to try them if
I'll get you some.
back when they used sugar instead of
Yeah.
aspartame or an
The
artificial
Mexican
save.
soda has real cane sugar.
Yeah.
It's good.
Um,
It's very
I
sweet.
think any foreign
Coke
soda's
original
about
recipe
50
versus
recipe.
Pepsi back then, in my opinion,
Do you
you
remember
couldn't
the
kill it.
fury, the fury that was kicked off when Coke changed the recipe in '85?
Yes. New
Oh,
Coke.
God, yeah.
Coca-Cola
Mhm.
Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. People lost their minds.
Yeah, what was
And
it
the whole
about?
commercial campaign and everything.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
parents were Coke drinkers, and I remember that being a huge problem when they switched to New Coke. And
That
it
was
just
almost
doesn't-
as bad as the. Sorry, Vinny, go ahead.
No, it just, I very rarely did I see my parents ever get too upset over anything, but they were definitely not fans of New Coke.
That's almost as bad as the Dylan Bud Light thing lately. That was quite a big upstore.
I almost think that Coke did it on purpose to rebrand their original to Coke Classic, so that they would have that marketing campaign to be able to come out with the new look for their Coca-Cola, their original drink.
Well, I could see why everybody got mad because it wasn't. I remember, and night and day difference.
The other thing I have listed for foods and stuff that have disappeared is companies. Now this one is because a lot of the companies are they're not the same name, but they've been bought and purchased and rebranded, and ultimately they still exist. But are there any companies you guys can think of that made a product? Like John mentioned RC Cola. I'm not sure what the company was that made whether it was RC or a parent company itself, but just real quick, any insights on that doesn't exist that we had when we were younger?
Not really a food company, but I miss being able to go to an actual butcher shop and get a fresh cut of meat. Now you go to Walmart and, oh yeah, we fresh cut it in the back. Uh-huh. I mean, you go and you could get a ribeye off a cow and it didn't have any dye or fillers or anything. You knew it come out of the neighbor's barn an hour ago, But there's not a food company, but I miss the aspect of getting fresh meat at an actual butcher shop. I can't think of anything. Some things I remember that went out that really weren't good for you was one was a chocolate milk drink that was known to cause cancer. It's called Alba 77. That's one thing, but that went out for a good reason. That was it. Oh my God, it was so bad that it gave you a chemical aftertaste, and like a burn after you swallow. You could feel it burn in your throat. Yeah, Alba 77. It was cheap, and it was a reason why it was no good. But nowadays, a lot of your processed foods are all made by pretty much the same company, ConAgra Foods. But
I miss the old Twinkies. I really miss the old.
Yeah,
Twinkies.
well, they brought them back anyway.
They're not as good as they were. It's not the same.
You remember the shelf life on an original Twinkie?
Yeah, it's like 99 years.
Yeah, you could keep those things forever, and you'd open it up 10 years later, and it'd be just as fresh as the day it was packaged.
Entertainment and technology has changed a lot since we were younger, and nowadays, if you want to sit down and watch an episode of The Sopranos or All in the Family, or even a newer show like one Chicago series, Chicago Firemen, you can find them on demand. But back then, we had what was called appointment television, where you would go through and your TV guide would come in the mail, and you'd look and find out, okay, is it a new episode of The Cosby Show this week, or is Cheers in rerun? Is Blossom on hiatus, and what is going on in the Wonder Years? What are some of the appointment television shows that you might remember from your youth?
See, the A-Team, Knight Rider, and Airwolf.
Airwolf, that's a good one. That's an underrated one that isn't mentioned as much as it was.
Very
Jan Michael
underrated.
Vincent, and I'm not
Yeah.
trying to promote it because the actor's name was Vincent, but Jan Michael Vincent, although he had problems later in his life, was Stringfellow Hawk. He was that character. I can't remember him being in anything else, but Ernest Borgnine and Jan Michael
Ernest
Vincent,
Borgnine
Airwolf.
made that
this-
show.
Yep.
Mhm.
When they rebooted or when they redid it for the fourth season with Van Dyke's kid, what the hell is his name? Dick Van Dyke's kid.
Yeah, what
It
was
just
that?
wasn't as good. I mean, at least they explained why Stringfellow and Santini were gone. Some shows won't even do that, but it wasn't as good. No.
I had
What
two
about
shows from back then.
yeah,
Dukes of Hazzard,
Yep.
Dukes of
one
Hazzard,
from
yeah.
back
Had
then I
cousins.
look forward to. And the other thing that I look forward to, we all did as a family, was every Sunday night, the Disney Family Movie Night. And then, I think Little House on the Prairie was a primetime show back then. But yeah, those are Disney used to have every Sunday night a fairly new movie that they would put on, and the families would get together. I think it was 8 or 9 o'clock at night, because I remember that was the night we got to stay up late, even though we had school. But we had to watch the Disney movie. But yeah, we memorized when the Dukes of Hazzard would come on. That was my favorite.
You knew that your weekend was coming to an end too. And if you were a football fan in the fall and you were watching the afternoon game, and Pat Summerall would then promote for 60 Minutes and Murder, She Wrote.
He wrote,
Yeah.
starring Angela Lansbury.
Another thing that has disappeared is magazines. A lot of the magazines that I would get or anybody would get as a kid have disappeared. They're just online now. Some
Mine
like
would disappear into the mat as soon as I got it.
some like Sports Illustrated, you can still go and get their entire archive by subscribing to their website all the way back to 1955. But Michelle, what was some of the magazines that your family subscribed to or would get in the mail?
The TV Guide.
Yes.
I think that's basically it. And then seed catalogs. So it was nothing exciting. I think I used to get Teen Beat. Because they had all the posters of the little cuties back then.
Same as me, but a little different on the cutie part.
This is the TV Guide from when I was born. I was born in April of 1979, and this is April 7th to the 13th, 1979. It is the TV Guide, and I could look up and tell you exactly what was airing in this. What region is this from? I
You
found
know
this
what
on
time you were
eBay.
born?
Yeah, on eBay
Oh,
a
there you
couple
go.
years back, and I'm not sure what region this is from. So while I'm looking, John, why don't you talk about your magazines, not your Playboys?
Oh, we had Mad Magazine, and my father had a subscription to Woodworkers. So he liked to do a lot of little like home type of carpentry stuff. He also had like a hunting magazine. But generally speaking, yeah, I mean, we used to get also the JC the Penny catalog or the Sears catalog, and
So
TV Guide was always
one of the
common one.
something when it would come, you'd look through some of the. I have a ton of old TV guides that I've gotten on eBay, and sometimes people write in Star it that they're going to watch it. This is from the Cincinnati, Ohio market, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was born at 1:35 a.m. on channels 2 and 5. I don't know what they are in Cincinnati area, but Tomorrow with Tom Snyder was airing. Scheduled guest screenwriter Eleanor Perry, who discusses her novel Blue Pages. Anybody else have any magazines inside TV Guide or anything that they have subscribed to?
Something I subscribed to, but I remember. Sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting.
No, go ahead.
But I remember because we didn't. I mean, magazines weren't a big deal. But I remember getting the Weekly Reader or I don't know if you call it a magazine, but in school you'd get that Weekly Reader thing. That was kind of cool. For me, the closest I'd get to magazines is like if we go into the drugstore, I'd stand in front of the magazine rack and look at the hot rod magazines. Where you're all, you're like football and stuff. I'm always a motorhead. Anything with horsepower, got a gas tank and pistons, and that was my thing. So I remember like Hot Rod magazine. There was just that kind of magazine. But we didn't get a subscription at the house. Hell, we went and bought our TV Guide at the store.
We had TV Guide. I wish I had kept more than I did. Obviously, I mentioned Nintendo Power, Sports Illustrated, Football and Baseball Digest, WWF Magazine. Usually, I got more than I thought of. One of the other things, and this didn't, in my household, it didn't show up until later because they didn't deliver way out in the boondocks where I lived, was newspapers.
You read your book club.
There are still newspapers, but for the most part, people don't subscribe to them anymore because you just click on your phone and get your news. In doing these nostalgic type shows for not only Tape Deck Tales, but Pigskin Glory and stuff, I utilize newspapers.com, another shameless plug. But a lot of, and I can find the Saranac Lake Adirondack Daily Enterprise and look back at the old issues that have been saved, thankfully, through digital technology. Did your parents get the newspaper delivered to your home? And did you ever look at them? No?
I always went for the weekend comics.
Yeah, me too.
That was my bathroom reading, was the weekend comics.
No, we didn't
was
get any
the weird kid.
newspapers.
I was
It's
the
always
weird
fun
kid.
to-
I'd actually read the paper and the classifieds, and I was very current
Classifieds
with.
were cool. I thought the
news and-
classifieds were awesome.
It's like Facebook.
I delivered the newspaper as a young adult.
Yeah, the classifieds are the Facebook marketplace of our era.
Yep.
Yes, they are.
And the bad thing about the classified is you get the paper, and the only time you'd really get a good classified ad would be on like a Sunday paper.
Mhm.
And by then, whatever was selling was already gone. Oh, I sold that Tuesday. Well, why didn't you take the thing? You can't just take the ad down now. You paid for it for like a week or whatever. And yeah, that was the bad thing. It wasn't usually by the time you got the paper in your hand, you seen something like, oh, sorry, sold it.
Yep.
Or I gave it away. I'm like, oh,
Market is sold. John, you mentioned last month when we were in our chat while we were planning our shows, you mentioned that you recently got film developed, as that's another technology that has changed. Nowadays, you just take it on your phone and you can send it to everybody you want. Mark and I were making a plan to print me off some standings brackets for the NFL, and I just sent him a photo of what I found, and he sent me back a photo of what he could make. But John, how's that changed nowadays? Did they look at you funny when you walked in to try to get the film developed?
Well, when I went in, it was a younger woman, and
what's
it
that?
took her a second to register exactly what I said because she was standing right next to the envelopes for it, and I'm like, do they still do it in the store or do they ship it out to someplace? And she's like, oh no, they send it out. It should be a few weeks. I'm like, oh, that hasn't changed. And yeah, it was a few weeks before I had to go back and remind them, hey, I got film. Is it back yet? Because they didn't bother to call me when it came in.
Jeez.
But yeah, no, they still had the envelope and everything. I was surprised. I mean, I was thinking I was going to have to really look up something to send it out myself, and I was surprised that it was Walgreens that did it. So
I want to say the development of the 1 hour photo thing was monumental in our lifetime.
Cool.
If you didn't
Absolutely.
have a Polaroid, if you were using a 110 or that kind of camera, you'd have to send them out and wait a week for them to come back. But the 1 hour photo, and I don't know as if we got it in Saranac Lake, but it was definitely in the mall in Plattsburgh, where you could go and drop it off and come back and pick it up in an hour, and that was just an amazing development technology wise. And who could have ever thought how easy it would be just to take a picture and look at it? I mean, we had Polaroids, so you'd have a couple of minutes where you'd have to wait and maybe shake it before you could look at it. But
we had a 1 hour photo development in Tupper and like the back of Kinney's or whatever when it was in the strip mall.
Don't mind my co-star here.
You didn't know if you were posing for family pictures and somebody had a monochrome or a Kodak or something, you didn't know if everybody was looking or blinking until you got developed, and then you'd get the the Christmas card in the mail from whoever took the photo the following year, and oh, little Susie's eyes are shut, and Johnny's flipping off the camera. You couldn't,
Yeah.
it's not like
Picking
now
his
where you can
nose
take
and
30 different pictures and use AI to cut out the bad takes and use the right ones.
careful, hon. Yeah,
Regardless,
don't mind me.
yep,
This little one is my world, and I won't ignore.
no, that's fine. Regardless of everything we've talked about tonight, whether it's playground equipment, the way the shopping has changed, technology, foods, magazines, our hairlines, one thing that is missing
Or
a
lack
lot,
thereof.
one thing that is missing nowadays that you don't see and you should is critical thinking and common sense. And I'd like to end the show tonight talking about that and pleading for America or any other countries that might be watching this to find it. To don't just watch what you see on the news and take it verbatim as gospel. Go look at the other side, whether it's politics, sports, or even the weather. Don't take everything you hear and see, especially in social media, as the be all end all, because
Yeah.
it can easily be debunked. And once it is debunked, don't continue believing it just because your person, your favorite celebrity says so. Critical thinking in 2026 needs to come back. You need to take your time and research. You need to go down the rabbit hole, if you were, to find out the truth of what it is that's affecting you, whether it's your career, your retirement, the next vehicle you're going to buy, how you're raising your kids. Without critical thinking and common sense, we're raising a country and a world of idiots. And that's not meant to disparage the human being, because the human being, individual, is very smart, but people together are dumb. And when you follow the herd, you follow the
I'm just
dumb.
gonna say the herd mentality.
The herd
Yeah.
mentality. You follow the dumb. I had a boss in college that one of his first rules was people are stupid. And that's not to mean that the five of us sitting here are stupid. No, that means that if you follow along with everybody that everybody says, your favorite celebrity or athlete, and I'm a football fan, but I'm not going to just blindly follow whatever Josh Allen says, although when he does say God bless, I do follow that. But no matter who the athlete or the celebrity or the politician is, question them. Find out where they're coming from, where the money's coming from that's telling them to say that, and use your common sense. Use your street smarts to learn about the situation you're in, and don't just blindly obey what is being told to you on your phone as gospel. So, in closing, for Tape Deck Tales, I hope that in 2026 your New Year's resolution is to use your brain. Use your brain for something other than putting a hat on. And no offense to Mark and John who are wearing hats tonight, because I wear hats most of my time too. But use your brain. Think. And until next month, and whatever topic it is that we discuss next month, we will. You gotta. You gotta remember that we are the generation that was raised different than most. The generations above us and below us, we were raised on a lot of part on our own, and we're also the generation that just doesn't give a bleep. Good night.